Friends and viewer, good day. A folk tale, a French folk tale. It is also a very famous among the people, and most of the people is well acquainted with this folk tale. This is a French folk tale. The name of this is the same is Sleeping Beauty. So this folk tale, Sleeping Beauty, the name of this. Many years ago, in a beautiful empire, there lived a king and a queen who just had one wish, that they should have a child. Oh dear Lord, please give us a child and we won't need anything else in our lives anymore. One day when the queen was wishing herself in the river washing, a frog came and said, "Your wish will come true. You will be having a child in the next year." And as the frog forecasted, the queen bore a beautiful daughter. The king was so excited that couldn't prevent himself from throwing a big party, and he invited not only his close friend and relative, but also the wise woman who we thought would be kind and favorable toward the little princess. He knew 13 of these women were living in his empire, but he only had 12 golden plates, so he had to ignore one of them. The feast was held gloriously. When the feast was about to finish, wise women gathered around princess and started to give her gifts. One bestowed virtue, one beauty, the third riches, and so on, whatever there is in the world to wish for. And when it was the 11th turn to present her gift, the 13 woman who has been not invited entered with the fire of revenge burning in her heart. She, without any hesitation, started yelling, "In her 15th birthday, your beautiful princess shall prick herself into a spindle and shall fall down dead." And without saying anything else, she returned and left the palace. So the 12th came forward, since she hadn't bestowed her gift then. She couldn't perish the curse, but there was something she could still do. The princess shall not die by touching the spindle, but she will fall into a sleep for 100 years. The king, who was desperate to save his daughter, commanded to destroy all the spindles in the empire. The princess grew up, and all the gifts who had been given to her were shining in her appearance and personality. She was so lovely, modest, sweet, and kind and clever that no one who saw her could help loving her. But in her 15th birthday, when she was alone in the castle, she got bored and started wandering around the castle, looking around every corner and room. Suddenly she saw an old tower. She climbed the narrow winding stair which led to a little door with a rusty key striking out of the lock, and the door opened, and there in the little room sat an old woman with a spindle diligently spinning her flax. "Oh, hello, Grandma," said the princess kindly. "What are you doing?" "I'm spinning." "Oh, I haven't seen this tool before. What is it that spins so fast?" And meanwhile she took the spindle into her hand. She began to spin. But in that very moment, her hand touched the spindle, and she passed out and lay in deep sleep. And in this sleep fell upon the whole palace. The king and queen, who had returned and were in the great hall, fell fast asleep, and with them the whole court. All of them fell asleep. The horses in their stalls, the dogs in the yard, the pigeons on the roof, the flies on the wall, the very fire that flickered on the earth became still and slept like the rest. Then around about that place there grew hedges of thorn thicker every year, until at last the whole castle was hidden from view, and nothing of it could be seen but the vane on the roof. From that moment, a rumor went overseas about a sleeping beauty, and from time to time and tried to force their way through the hedges, but it was impossible for them to do so, for the thorns held fast together like strong hands, and the young men were caught with them and could not being able to get free. There died a lamentable death. Many years later, a prince came to the country. In his way, he heard from an old man that there is a sleeping beauty had slept for 100 years, and with her the king and queen and the whole court. The old man had been told by the old man that many kings' sons had sought to pass the thorn hedge, but had been caught and pierced by the thorns and had died a miserable death. But the young prince said with courage, I will try my best. Regardless, I will win the way through, and I will meet the lovely princess. The good old man tried to dissuade him, but he would not listen to his words. For now the 100 years were at an end, and the day had come when the princess should be awakened. When the prince arrived near the hedge of thorns, it was altered into the hedge of beautiful, lovely flower, which parted and bent aside to let him pass, and then closed him in a thick hedge. When he reached the palace yard and saw the horses and dogs lying asleep, and on the roof the pigeons were sitting with their head under their wings, and when he came indoors, the flies on the wall were asleep. The cook in the kitchen had his hand uplifted to strike the scullion. Then he climbed higher and saw in the hall the whole court lying asleep, and above them on their thrones slept the king and the queen. And still he went beyond, and all was so silent that he could hear his own breathing. And at last he came to the tower and went up to the winding stair and opened the door of the little room where Princess lay. And when he saw her looking so lovely in her sleep, he could not turn away his eyes. And presently he stopped and kissed her. And she awaked and opened her eyes and looked very kindly on him. And she got up and they went forth together. And the king and the queen and the whole court waked up and gazed on each other with the great eyes of wonderment. And the horses in the yard got up and shocked themselves, and the horns sprang up and waged their tails. The pigeon on the roof drew their head from under their wings, looked around, and flew into the field, and flies on the wall crept on a little further. The kitchen fire leaped up and blazed and cooked the meat. The joint on the spit began to roast. The cook gave the scullion such a box on the ear that he roared out. Then the wedding of the prince and the princess were held with all glory, and they lived very happily ever after. So, in this way, this story, the sleeping beauty had lasted, and the princess had been saved after sleeping for hundreds of years. This is a folk tale, a French folk tale. I hope the children as well, the adults will entertain themselves. Thank you very much for kind listening.